to get my glasses adjusted anyway. So in continuing, just a few more things to add about our experience of going to Taiwan for the Bhikshuni ordination and training. And this part for me is actually much less about the ordination itself or the training, but it was really more a personal experience that I wanted to share with the community. I think all of us residents here are, as the second generation of Buddhist monastics, we have quite a different experience from our teachers who went to Asia and had the experience of being immersed in those Asian communities and probably the experience of being outsiders in those Asian communities, but really getting a sense of how those cultures worked, how the Dharma worked in that particular cultural environment. But we're homegrown. Most of us have spent very little time in Asia. In fact, most of us here, hardly any at all. So we learned the Dharma here. We first, met the teachings here. And my experience and our experience of what monastic life is Sravasti Abbey. I mean, we really have very, very little contact with monastic communities around the world at this point. So, which is fantastic. I mean, that's the reason Venerable started this monastery, was for us to have that very experience of being able to home grow a Dharma that could be really integrated with our culture and our society and serve in that way. So for that, I'm quite grateful. But to be in this for just a month, being in a completely different culture of a really big monastic community, had an influence that I'm not sure I can express immediately, because I think it was quite large. But in the short term, what I can say is some of the feelings that I had about that experience as it relates to my experience at Sravasti Abbey. For one thing, at Fogwanshan, which is quite a big temple, they have a resident community of 500 people. I don't know what the relationship of monastics is to the enrollees in the two colleges. I don't know if I ever heard that number. So they're not all monastic, but a lot. And so it's multi-generational. Master Shengyen probably is the longest term monastic. He ordained at the age of 12 and he's 85, so he's been a monastic for over 60 some odd years. And then, there was this whole community of new fully ordained bhikshus and bhikshunis, some of them quite young, and some of them quite old. So it wasn't just that there were a lot of seniors who had been monastics for a really long time, but there were some older people who were coming to monasticism late in life. And it wasn't just that all the seniors were old either, because there were a lot of people there. Some of our guiding teachers were very young, clearly had been ordained for a very long time and had ordained at an early age. So this kind of multi-generational energy of so many people holding the precepts together, holding the same vision of their master, and holding the commitment to share the Dharma in any way possible, that is the signature of Fogwanshan's take on that, was wonderful to see the potential of kind of the exponential possibility of a monastic community growing and growing and growing. So that was very inspiring. And then too, I think it could be easy to look at what they have there and not notice how they got there. Right now they have, as Venerable Jigme described very eloquently yesterday, all these huge things, these beautiful Buddha halls all over the place. They have lecture halls all over the place with really beautiful seating and very comfortable. And they had at least 3 dining halls that I know of. One that seats more than 3,000, one that seats more than several hundred, which we were mostly trained in, and then one that just feeds whoever comes through, that's like a little restaurant that feeds 3 meals a day. I mean, it's huge. And yet, to hear Master Shengyen's stories of how he came to that place, that when he first bought that land, all the devotees said, don't. This will be a mistake. You shouldn't do it. But he had a clear vision, and enough people said, well, we're behind you, we'll do it. Nobody wanted it because it was a hill outside of town completely covered with bamboo. But with his monastics and a few followers, they personally hand cleared, hand cut, started to clear that land themselves. And that's the basis on which this thing has grown. So, you know, we're not sitting on a bamboo hill, and we haven't had to hand clear the place where Ananda Hall sits. But we do a lot of hand clearing. You know, Rachel was just up there this morning felling some dead trees in our forest. And, you know, bit by bit, if we look around and really think about how Shravasti Abbey has developed, we can all come up with stories of places where our hand has touched, the volunteers who came from the very beginning, their hands have touched. This person who used to just be a volunteer is now a resident monastic. The contributions of individual people's energy, because they're inspired by this vision, is no different from what has built Fogwan Shan, and I think is no different from what has built and supported monastic communities since the time of the Buddha. So to have personally that much larger sense of the context in which we sit, because sometimes it's easy to feel a little isolated. You know, we have beautiful contact with people through the internet. We know that the Abbey is in relationship with people, not just locally, but I was looking at our Google Analytics yesterday. People from 41 countries looked at our website in the last 30 days. I mean, countries all over the world. So I know that we have that connection in that context. But to have this much larger vision of, who knows, 40, 50 years down the line, I won't be sitting here, but some of you will, and some of you will, and maybe some continuity of my consciousness, if I'm lucky, will show back up here pretty soon. And so to get the feeling that as we hold these precepts, as we train our minds to whatever extent we do in this life, our connection with the Buddha's teachings and our connection with our own potential does so much. It reaches out in so many ways, and it brings so much benefit. Even if the little reduction in suffering is very small, even if we just get a little understanding of how to change our minds, that's a significant thing. And it connects and interconnects with something that's been going on for 2,500 years or more in this iteration, and there were Buddhas before Shakyamuni who were also teaching this precious Dharma. So for me, there was something about being in that community, in that context, relating it moment by moment to what we're doing here, and you know, everything that we've learned from Venerable Children about the vision and what we feel internally about why we're inspired and want to follow it, that gives me a much larger sense of what we're doing and why, and the potential for benefit for 1,000 years, 100,000 years, for eons, who knows? But to hold that long-term view really helps sustain our practice, I think. And so I don't know if there's a way I can share as deeply as it touched me, but there is something about that expansiveness that I think I will hope to bring and stay very much alive in our work here at the Abbey.